tree.
Yeah.
I said that just as
Stacy's
you started
birthday is over, so screw it. Take down all the decorations.
That was hilarious. Just as you started that recording, I dropped an F-bomb.
I know.
Sydney, edit that out. Hey, we're recording this week. Welcome to Pros Talking Prose. Stacy can do the introduction this week because we're actually recording.
It's amazing.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Well, like Troy said, welcome to Pros Talking Prose, where Troy and I sit down and we talk about the business of publishing and writing. And we're really excited to talk to you guys today because there's some interesting trending tweets, I guess, that are happening recently. And one in particular that I think kind of didn't really spur this discussion, but it fits right into it. So it's kind of what I'm going to lead with, and then we'll kind of move into the rest of it. But we're going to talk today about research and learning the craft, the writing topic, whatever you might be working in, and like how that works and what that looks like when you're actually writing a book. So specifically, we're going to kind of talk about this in a broad way because not like, hello, my baby, hello, my darling,
hello, my
not
darling.
That way.
Hello.
Nope. Not that Broadway, but in the broad terms.
We would definitely be off Broadway if I was singing.
Yes,
way off.
But we'll we'll discuss this from a more broad perspective, and then next week I think that Troy and I will do a deep dive into the study of story and how that actually looks and what that looks like, so that if you are new to the writing gig, you can understand what is important in your journey as a writer, so that you can learn how to approach this business and how to actually approach learning how to write stories, because it is a craft. It does require time and effort. It does require learning. It is not something you can easy street. It's not an easy button. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this in a little more broad terms today. So I'm really excited about this.
And let me just start with saying that when I first became a novelist, when I first aspired to be a novelist, and when I actually became a novelist, and by novelist, what I mean is a paid novelist,
right?
Because I wrote novels in college, but nobody wants to see that. It's like grandma without her teeth. Nobody wants to see that, right? But nobody paid for those.
Nobody pays for those,
right? But one of the things that surprised me was the amount of education that it took to be a good novelist. And as I always say when I talk about this, I don't mean college. So I don't mean going to get
we don't
MFA.
mean becoming becoming a creative writer.
Is the mastering of telling stories takes a tremendous amount of work and education. And a lot of that can be found at conferences. It can be found in craft classes. I teach a craft class for free every month. Those are helpful. They're certainly not the be all end all, but they're helpful. There are other courses out there. There are some college courses that are helpful. But in order to be a good storyteller and a good novelist and to get better at it, you need talent to start with. And then you need to develop that talent through practice and education both. If you just practice over and over, you'll probably practice bad habits over and over until you get a coach or someone that comes in and tells you what good habits are, or until you learn what those good habits are. And that's a teeny tiny part of the research that you need to do as a writer. And along with, there's certain methods to that. So some of those we're going to talk about today. Some of those we're going to talk about in future podcasts. But just know from the start that being an author a lot of times means, I've got a friend of mine who runs a program called DIY MFA. And it's probably some of the best. She brings other writers courses and recommends them and stuff like that. And it's basically a way to educate yourself about the craft of writing and the business of writing through other resources rather than going to college and getting an MFA somewhere, because most of the time those skip some key elements to actually being a writer. in my personal opinion. Anyway,
Yeah, including the business side of things, but we'll talk
yes,
about that another day too.
that's another day. MFAs is a whole other discussion.
Yeah, it's a
Ooh.
whole other.
Anyway,
So we're going to talk about how first and foremost this thing that's trending on, I think it's on either Instagram or TikTok. I'm not sure. Or actually, no, I think it's on X. I think it's on X.
is it on,
So
on X?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was on X. I don't have
The
X,
symbol
so
formerly known as
yeah,
Twitter.
right.
All right.
So
Anyway,
anyway, so the thing that you know, I don't go into that world of social media. It's just another place where I think I would get absolutely sucked into a wormhole, and I don't like to waste time like that. But this particular guy I follow on YouTube, he another wormhole, but I digress. I want to credit his channel, and I'll find it for you guys here for real second in a second. But he spoke to this man carrying thing. Okay, so don't know why that channel is named that way. I've just started following him, but he's funny. Man carrying thing. So if you want to go look at his podcast, this is kind of what, or not podcast, but his channel, this is what he talked about. But he mentions this notion that this professor tweeted, or for lack of a better term, X'd a a
yeah.
post.
What is it called now?
I don't know. I think people still say tweeted. It's funny. I have no clue. Anyway, I'll have to do some research and find out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he posted that he is seeing more and more in his classrooms students who come in and want to learn how to write or will aspire to be novelists, and they are saying things like, I don't read books. He'll ask them questions like, who's your favorite novelist? And they'll say, I don't have one, I don't read. And I can't believe how much this struck a chord with me, because I've actually interviewed a few authors recently that have said this very thing to me. They've said, I don't read. And there's so many parts of me that kind of throw up red flags with this kind of thing. And I even told one of the authors, I'm sorry, I'm just getting some red flags from this one statement of yours. And I need you to clarify it for me. And he was right. He says, I don't like to read. And so he doesn't read books. And I asked him point blank, then how do you know how to tell stories? And he just told me, well, I just wrote what I felt. It's pure creativity. And there's arguments on X about this. You can go down the deep hole. I'm not going to. And man carrying thing, just he kind of hit on a few of these things, but it was something that actually really resonated with me as an author, because I realized that in this world where we are in like ingesting story, like Troy and I read hundreds of manuscripts a year. Like when we're doing this, we see these multiple different perspectives and the ways that the authors want to tell stories. But there is, if you go back in time to the time of Gilgamesh, you're going to see a pattern in storytelling, and the stories that resonate, the stories that have the longevity, the stories that continue to surpass generations or go through the generations with affection, are the ones that hit these chords, like they hit these points. So what I want people to understand here is that writing, it's not just storytelling. It isn't pure creativity. It's actually informed storytelling.
Well, yeah. And so I'll interject here that I used to say that you really needed to read in your genre,
Right.
or you needed to read in order to be a writer. And generally, I feel like that is still true.
It's still true.
But I started asking people instead, if they say they don't read, I ask them, how do they consume story? And what that means is, do you consume video? Do you listen
to
to
audiobooks? Yeah,
or
I
whatever the
consider
case
the
may be?
same.
Like, do you just watch movies? Because I've met some great storytellers who educate themselves through watching movies.
Right.
In fact, one of the master's courses that I took 2 years ago on characters centered around the class watching and analyzing movies. And the reason is it's just more accessible, and there are more movies that are just kind of common to our society than there are books. And it's easier when you have a month between classes to to go and find a movie and watch it rather than read an entire, War and
Book.
Peace or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. Right.
right? So it's for ease of study, right?
Right.
But it's all about studying story and characters and plot structure. Blake Snyder's Save the Cat came from the analysis of thousands and thousands of movies,
Screenplays. Hmm.
screenplays, and movies. The Catherine Farmer method, the story code method, came from the study of children's books and plays,
Right.
right? So what are all those things have in common? They're stories. So if you say you don't read, I'm going to ask how you consume story. If you say I really just don't like stories, but I think I'm a good storyteller, then I've got some questions for you, right? And I'm not saying you can't do it, right? I just I hate when I make a general statement like that and people come at me and be like, I can
Yeah.
do it and I don't study anything or whatever the case may be. That may be the case. You may be a rare
But
bird, but
also,
majority of people,
but I will
yeah,
also say, careful when you make those kinds of statements. I'm not talking about to Troy. I'm talking to those of you who tell yourself this, because you may be wrong.
that
And
is
don't be
yes,
don't be surprised if people don't share your opinion. And
right.
so I want people to know that even in fiction, and we're not talking about just nonfiction here, we're talking about especially in fiction, readers, they expect a certain level of quality in the story. If they're buying a story, they're paying you to entertain them. It's like when you go to the movie and the movie sucked. You have a right to your opinion, right? Do you
Mhm.
have the right to ask for your money back? Well, no, not really, not necessarily, right? You consumed the story. Same thing with the stories, right? But the thing is there's still they still have a right to their opinion. And if your story sucked, they have the right to tell people your story sucked, which may influence other people into whether or not they're going to buy your book.
They're going to
And
consume your story. Yeah,
right, right.
exactly.
So
And the other,
details matter. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead. Go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, and the other aspect of this is that there are expected things that happen in storytelling that you
Right,
may or may not be aware of.
right,
And so when I say storytelling in this sense, what I'm talking about is commercial storytelling, a story you can sell, not
right,
something you can tell your friends around a campfire. That
right,
may be an entirely different thing. And if that's unsatisfying, the most you're going to get is a bunch of booze from your friends around the campfire, right?
right,
But if you're trying to commercially sell something, that can make a huge difference in your career if the quality of your work suffers, essentially, because similar to what we talked about last week, if you let your ego get in the way
right.
of accepting feedback, well, then your story can't be the best that it can be. The best thing that can happen to you around the campfire when you tell a bad story is for your buddy to say, you know what would have made this better and help you tell a better story. Next time you tell it around the campfire, it'll be, I mean, comedians do this all the time. They go to small clubs, big time comedians go to small clubs and test material.
Oh my
Why do
gosh.
they do it? Why do
And
they do that? Because they
it,
want feedback
the
that
thing
makes them better,
the thing that
you
makes
know?
me that makes me want to like really kind of grab people by the ears and show them like how this doesn't just mean books. If you listen to any award show, which by the way I hate award shows, so the fact that I'm
Oh,
even mentioning this should just tell you something. But actors, they study their craft, right? They have different
mhm.
methods. A lot of them go to school. A lot of them learn through method acting. They learn through, the different, yeah,
Improvisation,
they
all
test
kinds of
their,
stuff.
right, they learn and they test and they grow. The thing that's really interesting about when I listen to award shows is that sometimes, well, I would say probably most of the time, when an actor receives an award, they'll get up there and they'll mention the icons in the room that they looked up to. They'll say, "Oh my gosh, there's Meryl Streep. I actually love every movie that you've done." I remember there's one that it was funny. Jennifer Lawrence. I remember there's a funny like meme that everybody's I'm sure seen, but it's like where she's sitting at the bar and or she's talking to a reporter or something, and Jack Nicholson comes behind her, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, that was Jack Nicholson," and she's just like horrified and mortified and awestruck that this man came up and said he was a big fan of hers, where she's probably thinking this man literally runs this world, right? That he's the actor. So it's just kind of like one of those things where they learn and they know who have come before them, who have paved the way for them, who they can like model their acting styles after. It's important in that line of work. So why wouldn't it be important in this line of work as well? Like that's where I'm kind of like, that's where I kind of get stuck.
And we can dive into this more next week, but I mean, in every industry and every world that we live in, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
Now, we hope also to become one of those giants that people look up to. I love telling stories. I hope people love my stories. I was going through some of my reviews earlier today because I was looking for cherry picking reviews to put in a thing that I'm putting together.
Right.
Stacy knows I hate promoting myself, but I have
He
to
really
promote
does.
myself. I absolutely abhor it. But I was reading through a couple of reviews, and a couple of reviews, I was like, oh, a couple of them I hadn't even seen before. And I was like, oh,
nice.
That's amazing, actually. And you saying that about me makes me feel really weird inside, but at the same time, it makes me feel good,
Yeah.
because I know that I've worked and I've studied my craft and I've done a lot of things. And I'm in a place right now where like this story that I'm writing right now is just flowing like crazy. And I love it. I love that aspect of it. But that all comes from studying people that, I mean, I think I'll never be as good as those people. Now, maybe I will be. I don't know. But I feel like they're miles ahead of me, right?
Right.
So we stand on the shoulders of giants. So learning from those who came before, who have told stories before, even if that particular type of storytelling has gone out of fashion or doesn't work as well anymore, or whatever the case may be, you can still learn something from that person and the things they've done in their writing. But you can also just learn from reading broadly. You can learn a lot about the structure and how stories are made. Like you get to see the inside of it. And we'll talk about that more in a future podcast. We'll talk about actually dissecting stories on purpose to understand them so that you can improve your own craft. It's a really cool thing, actually. There are ways that you can train yourself to do things differently so that you understand story better. It's awesome. It's 100% free self-education. And you're going to watch movies anyway, so you might as well learn something from them.
Right.
But anyway,
Exactly.
but yeah, that's for a future podcast. But I get really passionate about that simply because I understand that without the writers that came before me, I would be nothing.
Right. Right.
So
so what I wanted to hit on next in this whole like mishmash of broad topic-y stuff that we're trying to hit on here. Yeah, researchy. I kind of want to talk about where authors kind of go wrong in this process. And I think that I think what happens is that authors sometimes they think, well, first, let me throw this statistic out there. About 97% or more, I think, I'm actually thinking more at this point, but about 97% of Americans that were like, they did this study and of course, they didn't pull all of us, right? But they're like figuring based on averages and studies, right? Significant numbers. Yeah. But they said about 97% of us want or feel we have a book inside of us. That's significant. That's almost everybody. Out of 10 people, that's 9.5 of you. There's there's a lot of you out there.
Guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's kind of a weirdo. Walks funny.
Right, whatever. Right. Whatever. But anyway, so we've got 97 people, 97% of the population thinks that they have a story in them and they want to write a book. Well, pre-2025, I would go like maybe pre-2024. It was a very difficult prospect to write a book. You had to sit down, you had to figure out how you were going to do this. You were going to brainstorm, you were going to work through all this creative process, and it was going to look very, very ugly because it's a very ugly process. It's very difficult. It's a struggle, people. But the thing is that it still was one of those processes that weeded out those of us who don't have the skill or the, I guess, resilience to actually apply the work that comes with writing a book. And so that process didn't mean that we weren't getting bad books. We still got bad books. That still happened, but it weeded out some of the slop, right? Then you fast forward to when the age of AI comes in, and then now everybody is like, oh, all that 97% now goes, oh, well, now I can just pop my idea in to AI and it will write my book for me. And that hard part, that struggle, is now it's not as difficult, right? So I think where authors kind of go wrong sometimes is that they feel like they want this speed, this output, they want this instant gratification. Thank you, Amazon, for giving us that, because it totally ruined the whole wait for it and the snail mail, right? But
Yeah.
like you want a finished product and you want it right now. But what happens is you fail to understand that there's a right way and a wrong way to research the study of story, what actually needs to go into that story and how that needs to be crafted.
Well,
so you avoid studying, reading, verifying. That's where things kind of go wrong, in my opinion.
well, and let me throw something out there, because I saw a study today and I have to look more in depth at it because a friend of mine mentioned it. And I'm like, really? And I went and looked at that study. So here's the deal. If you are writing a book using AI, but doing it correctly, human assisting it and stuff like that, it takes about the same number of hours as writing the book itself. Now,
I'm
let me
nodding.
qualify this. Let me qualify this by saying this is what did, much like the rest of this podcast and all of them that have come before it. So God love all you people who disagree with me, because I'm happy you disagree with me.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, what I mean by doing that correctly is going through, inserting your voice, fixing the AI ticks that are a part of your that are part of typical AI manuscripts and making it human. Now, there are people,
or inserted when you try using the AI to edit.
when you use the AI to edit and you tell it not to insert things and it inserts things. That
Right.
happens. I mean, anyway. There's tons of studies on that. I'm not going to go down those studies.
No,
but
we did it.
The fact
We
is,
shared those a couple weeks ago.
if you clean that all up, like the process of cleaning that all up, or of directing the AI through smaller chunks of your book and individual prompts, right? All of that takes the same amount of time as if you wrote the book yourself.
Right.
If you're doing it that way and doing it correctly. Now, what I will say is that there are people with physical and mental limitations that struggled previously to get their books into the world, or maybe didn't struggle previously, but something happened. They had a traumatic brain injury. They had something happen to them. They have tremendous brain fog.
We've worked with authors.
Stories.
We've worked with authors with Parkinson's. I worked with one that didn't have AI, and I worked with one that did. And I will tell you that the one that did have AI, it was much easier for him to write his book.
Right. It speeds up the process. Okay. So there are circumstances where, even though technically it takes just as long, being assisted with AI when you write is not only is it acceptable, it's good, and it's a wise way for you to work through your story. As you know, as a friend of mine says, he says, not good, wise, right? He's talking about wise ways to do it. Let's not talk about whether you could or should, but let's talk about being wise about what we're doing. Okay. So, but all that means is that you still have to do the study, you still have to do the research, you still have to understand the story, and you still have to direct the AI. Now, people that are doing that for that reason, I love them. And I love their stories. I'm happy that they're doing it that way. So some of those people that are writing a book a month with AI, they could write a book a month without AI before AI came on.
Yeah,
They're just using
that's really
AI
interesting.
as an assistant. So that's some of those people, that's what's happening is it's not that there's suddenly this acceleration. And the other part of this is the marketing and the bringing of your book to market. If you don't
Exactly.
already have a name, doing so takes time. Building that name takes time. Bringing your book to market takes time. So you can write books as fast as you want, but if you really want them to sell, you're still going to have to put that human commercial effort into it, or even the AI commercial effort into it, which still takes time and money both.
Right.
Right. So anyway, so all that being said is that nothing is a shortcut for understanding story as a human being. Right.
Right.
Now, and there are ways that you can train yourself to understand it better. That is some of the research that we're talking about. Okay. So
Right.
don't skip this part. Don't skip this part because this is the fun part. It's hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, I took 2 master classes a couple years ago, both at the same time. I tell people constantly, don't do that. That was dumb. That was stupid. Don't be like me. Learn lessons. Take one at a time. Hell, take half at a time. It'll be better for you. It really will.
Right.
You'll actually sleep more. But the point of it is that the reason I took those classes is to more fully understand the story, even though I already have a really deep understanding of story. I want to understand it more and understand it better. Don't skip this part. It's the fun part. The part of the drafting with AI that's fun is the working with it to make a
To make a
story.
story.
Not
Mhm.
just hitting a prompt and hitting a button, but working with it to make a story. Work with it to make a story.
And
So
working with
you're both
editors
working
yeah,
together.
to get that all honed in.
Yeah.
It's really
And
important.
then, yeah,
So
working with
yeah,
human editors at the end to help you ensure that it is you that shines through rather than an
exactly.
AI.
Then
That's
an AI,
all.
exactly.
We're
So
not afraid of AI. We don't hate AI.
nope, we don't.
None
We
of
use
that.
it. I use it every day, guys.
Yeah. Anyway.
Another thing I wanted to point out, Trey, and kind of segue into is that, um, I'm having to teach a class tomorrow for not for writing, but for people who research for family history and genealogy, right? And you know this, but I'm teaching this class, and I was asked to come in and talk a little bit about what AI is good for and what it's not good for when it comes to family research, right? From researching these things, and it's kind of interesting. It'll be fun to talk to these people. Um, um, I made a joke with my it sounds so ageist, but I was like laughing. I was like, one of the first questions I want to ask these people is like, how many of you have a jitterbug? How many of you have a cell phone? That'll tell me
Yeah.
exactly what the level of skill you guys have in this room. Because AI requires a little more skill than just prompting it, right? Just asking it a
Mhm.
broad question. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about is that using AI for research is something that you need to be kind of careful about. Now, for those of you who don't know this about AI, it is not sentient. It doesn't think. It is a large language model. There is a lot of information coming out recently and will be coming out soon about whether or not the efficacy of AI and whether or not it's even a tool we want to continue to use. But I will tell you that currently, in this current climate of use and its current accessibility, it it has this reputation of being a, like, I don't know, all knowing, all seeing, all,
Almost
amazing,
godlike
right?
software.
It's like an oracle. And the thing is, folks, is it lies. It lies. And the what I mean by that is I don't mean it thinks about lying to you and it's being devious. I mean it's trying to solve a problem, and if there is a hole or gap in its understanding or in its knowledge base, it's going to fill in the gap with what's called a hallucination. So it will make
Hmm.
something up. So when you're doing research, it is not the same as Googling something and looking for citations or references. It is not the
Sources.
same thing. AI will make stuff up. And so, specifically with this family history center and like talking to these people who do this family research, That's one of the most important things I want people to understand is you can't just go into the AI and say, hey, I'm looking for this particular progenitor and I would really like to know where they came from. The AI is looking through language models. And even when you do a deep research search on it through like Perplexity AI or whatever, you're still going to run into the necessary work of verifying the resources that are shared with you, because
Hmm.
it is literally just pulling language from those sources and just throwing them all together. And if there are gaps, if there's nothing, it will make it up. It will
It'll fill it in.
pretend.
Well, and here, I want to throw another wrench in this that I have tested and I've seen tested.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Okay. You would think that if you take a large language model and you create a small language model that only includes the information that you want that model to pull from,
Right.
and it has no access to the rest of your stuff. Now, it's always going to have a certain amount of access depending
Right.
on how you arrange it, right? But if you put all the information and you're using the current models, chat, Claude, Gemini, whatever, even if you have given it a data set to work with, it can still hallucinate or make connections that are
It
not
will
there.
always
And the
hallucinate.
reason is it is because it is a predictive model that detects patterns and is very good at detecting patterns.
Patterns.
But a
Mhm.
predictive model that is good at predicting patterns and detecting patterns is not the same as something that returns 100% true information.
Right.
Now, there are things that you can do in your prompting to lower the number of those hallucinations, but there are many studies that show that you cannot prevent them entirely. Now you think, with fiction, that's not that big of a deal, but it
But
is
it is because
actually.
it messes with a few things that Troy and I have noticed in some fiction. One is time. We have seen
Yes.
multiple novels come across our desk where we've implemented AI to kind of help us fill in gaps, fill in character holes, whatever. And when we've done that, it has like lost the timeline. So we have to go
Hmm.
in there and we have to find the timeline and fix
And
it because
we mean authors have presented them to us that they have
right.
used to correct
That's
time.
yeah,
We
sorry.
don't take
Thanks.
your manuscript
No.
and try to
No,
fix
when
the
we're talking,
timeline with
when
AI.
we're working with
No.
our clients. But one of the things that yeah, like specifically, I'll mention this. We had a character that was sitting in front of a fireplace, and it was late at night in the wintertime. Not late at night. It was in the evening at wintertime. Um, it was like after, like while she's sitting there thinking, she's all of a sudden supposed to go have dinner, and then while they're at dinner, they go through this really traumatic event. And then dinner is forgotten about. And then dinner happens. And then they go back and they are supposed to go back to the room. And it just didn't feel like it flowed correctly.
Hmm.
So we had to
And
address that.
which is a mistake that human authors make
Human
too. So
makers can make that too.
we
Yeah.
don't want to say that this is exclusively an AI
No,
thing, because the majority of problems that we find with AI, like we discussed a couple weeks ago,
it happens with
are
authors too.
also human author
Human. Yeah.
errors that human authors make.
Yeah.
So, but when it happens in a repeated pattern
And which it
that
does.
is greater numbers than what usually happens with a human author, then we have to address it and understand, because it's and understand what's happening so that we can go back and
We can go
correct
back
it
and
in the
fix it.
proper way, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we're not saying that, you know, AI is producing these huge number of errors or whatever. What we're saying is this is a
These are
pattern.
patterns.
And
Hmm.
the truth is, I don't think that AI is going to get much better at creating manuscripts, at creating novels and fixing these problems, because what it's being fed, again, as it's learning, as authors are feeding stuff back to it, they're feeding back novels that have been created by AI. So we're into the cycle where it's got a confirmation bias that this is a good novel when it's not. Okay. So humans are likely always going to have to be a major part of that story creation and storytelling process. You are going to have to do your research as far as time and the temperature at different times, because basically AI does not have a sense of time because it's not tied to time in the same way that we as human beings are.
It's also
So,
not timed to physics. Like it doesn't
right.
understand physics, doesn't understand up, down, left, right. For some reason, it just
Hmm.
doesn't understand it. So this is one of the reasons why it's not good at architecture.
Right. We
Um,
had a friend of mine, I had a friend of mine who we like to do this thing of where we act out bad fight scenes that humans have written. Because if you follow the stage direction that the author has written, a lot of times you're swinging a punch at someone and they are clear across the room
the
because
room.
that's the way the description reads, right? So there's no way that punch lands like the text says, you know? You have to travel 14 feet for that to land, right? Well, it's even funnier when you do it with AI created fight scenes because
Mhm.
now John Wick is 4 miles from here and I throw a punch and it
Right?
still lands,
It's
right? So this is just part of the things that we have to understand is part of those are human things, but also like if in a fight scene, when you're writing a fight scene as a human being, I 100% recommend that if you don't know how to fight, because you've never been trained, you never had martial art training, never had boxing training, anything
Here's where
like
the
that,
research comes
that
in.
you find a partner who does, or a couple of people who do. And just like when we do a table read of a script, we do a table read or an act out of the fight scene. And then we realize where the chair is and where the person is and how those things relate to each other. And then we can rewrite that
Yeah.
fight scene in a way that it makes sense. It's the same when it comes to dance scenes
Yeah.
in books. And the other
Sex
one is
scenes.
Stevie authors, sex scenes.
Sex
If you
scenes.
can write good fight scenes, you can write good sex scenes. But
What?
I mean,
No.
honestly, yep, same type of thing. However, um, one of those things is more pleasurable to research than others. So
I will recommend Fight
if you
Right. I
need,
like it. Fight
yeah,
Right, but
Fight Right is a,
Fight Right is a
yep.
good book. It's a quick read. It's easy read. Who wrote that? Do you remember who wrote that?
I'm not sure
I
who
can't.
wrote that one. Christine Nielsen has one about writing good fight scenes. She's a black belt in Taekwondo.
Yeah, I
Really
gotta
good
find.
reference for
I have
things
it up
like
there
that.
somewhere. I just don't know where it's at. So I'm gonna
Um,
have to look at it. But
so
Fight
yeah,
Right
but I
is
mean,
good.
if you have questions about those things,
You
there
do
are resources, there are
research.
ways
Yeah,
to
research.
research,
Yeah.
right?
So
There are
so
ways to research all these things so that you do them correctly, not because mainly because your reader is seeing it in their heads and they can feel if it's wrong.
right.
Okay, so this is just something, it's very human, right? So write it from a human perspective, but also go get a human expert to help you with this particular part of your writing. If you don't know about it, go find someone who
I
does,
was
right?
laughing. There's a couple people that are on Instagram that like they'll show up in my feed and I don't know who these guys are. I want to credit you guys. I'm sorry, but there's a couple of them that'll read like they'll read books and they'll like act out what they're reading that just doesn't make sense. And one of them that I always laugh is like she smiled with her bottom teeth and they'll be like
Yeah.
like me on
That's
the
so
camera
funny.
just showing it's so funny. Yeah, so he you know like just funny stuff, but anyway, those ones are always the funny ones, and they're right. Like sometimes that comes out, you know, from bad writing, and sometimes it just comes out from like, you know, but like I said, this is one of those things. What this is why you have an editor, right? To kind of bounce these
Right.
ideas off for the editor. Go, hey, listen, do you really mean for it to be like this? And not let your ego get in the way and actually realize,
Well,
like, here
and
we
hey,
go.
listen, so let me throw another thing in there too. As an editor, okay, first of all, I have problems.
Yes, you do.
I do. And one of them is that love to research things.
Yeah,
I love to
yeah.
research things. And some of you are saying, that's not a problem. Oh, you
It
don't
can
know
be.
me.
It distract. It's
When you
really easy
spend your
distracting.
entire afternoon researching one thing from someone's manuscript that you're editing, 'cause you're like, that
Oh,
doesn't sound quite right. Did they actually have that in 1885?
yeah.
let me tell you
Thank you.
something. It
Thank
gets a
you,
little bit
Wes Rand.
ridiculous.
I'm calling you out.
Oh, he's only one of them.
I
He's
know.
only one of them.
He
I've had
throws those
so
things at
many,
me. I'm like, I go down
so
wormholes with him.
many.
Like, where
Oh
was
man,
that
I did
brothel
this.
in night? Yeah, it's so
Oh,
fun.
I did this World War II book. Oh, what was fascinating about him is this one brothel that he had. It was excellent. Actually, that madam was. I knew this because of,
She's well known
well,
in history. Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
Anyway,
it's
it's a
how
great.
I knew that's a whole different story. But anyway, so, but here's the thing: as an editor, I will go and do research on your manuscript. So if you
Mhm.
say this particular thing happened in this police department and this is how it happened, I will actually go and research the policy manual and the structure of that police
This is
department.
why I love throwing you the more technical stuff, especially the stuff that has
Oh,
to do
because
with the
I love
military.
it.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
you have your, Troy,
well,
for those
right.
of you who don't know, where he was a veteran and he was in the army, and you worked as like a radio, like you weren't you working on like
A
radios or
radar.
something?
No,
Yeah,
radar.
radar. So
Radar.
yeah, like he was like working on radar. He's got some funny
Yeah.
stories, but anyway, like
But yeah. Oh,
that kind of experience really plays into, I mean, thing about editors is we're a dump of like useless material
useless information.
until we get this great
Useless.
book where we're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I
Well,
know.
and here's the
Like,
other thing is, so let me just use that veteran experience as an example.
yeah,
Okay, I was in the army, so I understand army rank structure.
right.
If you were in the Navy, I have a son in the
I
Navy,
have a
and
son
I
who's in the
can
Marine Corps, right?
I
Just so
can
yeah,
research
right.
naval structure because it's
Hmm.
slightly different. The E numbers for those of you in the military, the E
Yeah,
numbers all are the same: E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, right?
right.
But the rank, the name of the rank that
The
goes
name of the
next to
ranks are
those is
different.
different.
Hmm.
For the Air Force, it's just pansy for all of them. Oh, I don't mean that.
Don't say that.
I
I
don't
just
mean
met
it.
this great guy from the Air Force who lost his
I
leg
don't
in
mean
a
it.
battle, and he was
But anyway, no,
amazing.
no. I'm not making fun of you Air Force people too much, but I'm an Army
But
guy, so
everybody
I have to.
knows. Everybody
But you know
knows.
what I mean? But the point of it is that if I need to know something about Air Force structure and the way they do things, I go to an Air
Air
Force
Force guy.
expert.
Hmm.
Like when I was doing a book with a Blue Angel, right? And then he's on a private jet team. Well, many of the people from the private jet team are from the Thunderbirds, not the Blue Angels.
Oh
They
yeah.
actually have different commands and different ways that
Well,
they
aren't they
say
different
things when they're
branches
running
of?
an air show.
They're
Yeah,
different branches
they're
of
different
military.
branches of the military,
Hmm.
so they say things differently when they're doing maneuvers in an air show. So one of them is ready, hit it, and the other one is slower. It's a
Hmm.
slower version of that. Well, you have to know which one you're using in when you're doing the air show so you don't
Hmm.
like run into each other and stuff like
Right.
that, right? But the point is that for me now I understand that. So when I hear those call when I watch that new Blue Angels movie and I hear those radio
Oh
calls,
yeah, yeah.
I know why that is and what's happening, what they're doing. That's
Right.
cool, right? Does that have any bearing on my normal life? No,
No,
none at all. But the point is,
but it's
like, I
fun.
didn't know that. Like, I knew the way we do things in the Army and our Army radio protocol and stuff like that, but it's different in the Navy and different in the Air Force. Awesome. That's something I can research quite easily.
Hmm.
The structure of different county sheriff's departments and different police departments is different. I can research it easily because the basic structure is familiar enough to me that I can go, okay, this is the way this department does it. Because especially on the East Coast, departments do it very different. Anyway, that's a
Yeah,
long story. I'm not going to
it's
go down that
long.
road.
Yeah, but
But
it's
the
research.
point is that this is the kind of research that like some things like I have a friend of mine who is in a small town in Texas. He is in their police department,
Right.
right? So when I get a book across my desk and it's a small town in Texas, I make a phone call. I don't
Right.
Google. I don't ask Chat GPT. I make a
Hmm.
phone call, right? Because he can tell me in a minute. He can tell me way faster than I can read the policy manual on Google, or then Chat GPT can come up with something that may or may not be the right answer, right?
Right.
I could get a human answer really quick. You know, I have friends in a lot of different places. My friend and I we wrote a book on Star
Hmm.
Trek and ended up meeting an astronaut. Okay, rare thing, cool, very cool. But like, it means I have a resource when I want
Hmm.
to know something. If somebody wrote a sci-fi book and they say something about space, I can go, does that really work that way? And call someone who's been to space and figure that out, right?
Right.
So this is the first of all, there's a great thing about the human connection is you know that they're going to tell you the truth, that they're
Right.
right, right? They're not going to make something up more than likely about their own profession. So there's that part of it. So you have the authority of understanding it from a human perspective, but you also just get to talk to cool human beings. We
Yeah.
are solitary people as writers. So reach out. Get
Right.
outside your house. Realize Windows is not just on your computer. It's an actual
It's
thing
a
made of
thing.
glass that you can slide open and air comes through. It's freaking cool. But
Well,
yeah. So
it's
anyway,
it's
sorry,
it's no,
sidetracks,
that was
little
great. No,
sidetrack.
because what it reminded me of is it reminded me of the time you were telling me about Max Boucher and how like you had to do the research to find out how he was like because you had to learn how he was going through his ranks, right? Like you were learning through
Right.
how he was
Well,
like
yeah,
how many years he was in training and how many years.
because I had to put him in his mid to late 30s because you don't become a homicide detective in your 20s in Seattle,
Right.
right? Because that's the way the police department works. Everybody starts the same place and you move up through the ranks and then you sift into specialties,
Right.
right? And so some moves between departments are parallel moves and some moves are promotions, but like you have to, and then what does it take for like, so how would he go from being a Seattle PD homicide detective to being a private investigator? Like, what's the legal implications of that? And how does he do that? How does he get to carry a gun? How legally in Seattle, like in
Yeah.
Washington, right? There's all these things, but part of it was just his life. Like, okay, I have him, he went the Marines, right? Okay, so he's got Marine experience, so he's at least got some time in the Marines. Then he comes out of the Marines and becomes a police detective. Okay, so but he can't just become a police detective right out of the Marines,
Yeah,
because
you gotta
he was
be a
a
beat
grunt
cop
in the
and you gotta be,
Marines.
yeah,
Yeah. So first you work traffic and you work your way up, right?
right.
And that's the system, all the stuff everybody know, but different police departments work different ways. So, like some police departments, you have to have a certain number of years of experience in certain areas before you can move up
And
in a
sometimes
department.
I've learned that in some, like, I think it was in Chicago or something, but this is just for my true crime people, but like true crime likes research. But I know that they won't let a homicide detective stay in homicide for more than a certain amount of years. Like they rotate them in and
Hmm.
out because they are trying to protect them,
Certain
like keep them
departments,
right. Hmm.
especially for sexual victims. I
Yeah,
mean,
the SVU. Hmm. Like
SVU type things,
they
special
like,
victims
yeah,
units.
they move them
Usually, like
around.
it's not like Mariska Hargitay and you just stay in the
Yeah.
special victims unit for 40
For 100
years.
years.
No, you don't. This doesn't, which is that's my yoga greeting, by the way, Mariska Hargitay.
Oh
But
yeah.
anyway, so
She's so awesome.
because oh my God. Anyway, but but anyway, all of that aside is like they rotate you out of certain units. A friend of mine's dad was in the Caldwell Police Department here in
Hmm.
Idaho and was a part of that special victims unit where he often was playing a 13-year-old girl on the internet trying to catch predators.
That's hard.
Now, the reason you rotate out of that is because you find out that people that you know and maybe even admire
Mm,
are online trying to chat with 13-year-old girls.
mm-hmm,
Yuck, bad, terrible, but the things it does to your mind,
mm-hmm,
as we often say, stare not into the eyes of the monster too long unless you become the monster yourself. As we study monsters, the danger is that you become a monster,
mm-hmm.
and there's some great stories that explore that whole thing. But I mean, the point is that you just need to know that structure, right?
You
If
need to
writing
understand those
military
things when you're
stuff,
writing about those things, right?
you're writing military stuff, understand the military. You've never been in the military or you were in one branch of the
Do
military,
some
not the
research.
other. Do some research, call somebody. People are happy to talk about it. If you're doing
Mm-hmm,
something that's set in the past, my dad was in Vietnam. He's passed away now, but he was in Vietnam. Many guys of his era were in Vietnam. You want to know what Vietnam was like? Go talk to the
talk to a
guys who were in
veteran.
Vietnam.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I mean, those guys, they will talk to you. Sometimes they're reluctant. My dad was reluctant to tell me some of the stories that he told me. Um,
It's
but
difficult.
he told them anyway. But I mean, it's difficult. But there are people that will tell you the truth about the things that they do often, and often they love the things that they do. The Ada County coroner, I literally can
Oh
call her if
yeah.
I have questions. She
Yeah.
is super nice and
They've
very,
been
very helpful.
they've done some amazing writing clinics with the
Yeah,
coroners and the detectives here in
done some
town. So for mystery
amazing writing
writers, yeah,
clinics.
it's
Yeah, it's
amazing.
fantastic. It's super fun.
So
So anyway, but all that being said is there's something to be said for human research because of the human contact and the networking and because of accuracy.
and also it's
So,
there's something to be said for trying to do things yourself. I remember one time Michael Brent Collins was telling me a story about, I mean, he might have even tweeted or posted this, but he was talking about how like he was trying to pick locks one time. He was learning because he
oh
wanted
yeah,
a
he learned to
client
pick
to,
locks.
yeah, one of his
I've done the same thing.
characters needed to learn how to pick or had to pick a lock. So he had to learn how to pick locks. And so he was like posting himself learning to pick locks. It was really kind of cool. And it was fun to follow
Well,
follow him doing
yeah,
that.
I did this research. Oh, it was so fun on how to pick a lock on a particular type of vehicle that I knew was relatively easy to steal. But I'm like, how do they actually do this? And when I put it in the story, I had to fictionalize it because it was so easy.
Easy.
Like, if you had that
Yeah.
type of vehicle, I would go, I would unscrew your antenna from the car and be inside your car in like 15 seconds.
That's
And people
terrifying.
are like, how in the world do you do that? I'm like, I could be driving away. I could break your ignition and be driving away in your car right now. And
William's
they're
the
like,
same
that is
way. It
terrifying. That
is.
is
And
terrifying.
what's
And I'm
terrifying is
like,
my husband's actually had to do it for people like when they've lost their keys or they're like a trucker and he's like
mm,
helped them get their car or their truck started. I'm like, oh my gosh,
well,
that's
and I
terrifying.
feel bad because of like, if you're helping someone do that, I'm like, you really want to make it look harder than it is
You're right.
because, you want to really play around with it for a while.
This is a
Make it look
struggle.
like it's really difficult. Oh
This
my
is
God,
really
this is
hard.
hard. Oh, cool. Oh, barely got it open. You don't want to do it like 10 seconds to be like, chunk. There you go. They're
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty funny.
what? So anyway,
Well,
but yeah,
it's
all of that
fun.
being said, I mean, this is the research part. First of all, that's extremely fun. If you learn to pick locks, it's easy. You can get a lockpick set off of Amazon
Yeah.
and teach yourself to pick locks. And unless it's a really, really good lock, you can pick it.
Right. You
I
can figure it
promise
out.
you.
Yeah.
But
But
I mean, yeah. I
but
mean,
but yeah, I want people to understand that like the research part of working on this kind of stuff is actually it's fun. Reading books is fun. Learning this stuff is fun. I mean, there's so much that's part of the writer business that is fun that I think people are skipping the fun because they're looking for that fast, quick, easy button,
for a
right?
quick,
Yeah, they're
easy way
looking
to
for
do
that.
it.
I don't want to take the time to do this. I've got too much to do, or I'm missing the boat because look, somebody else is putting a book out. And anyway, you're not missing anything. Trust me. And that's why they're calling these AI books slop, because it's just, they're not taking the time to actually do the research in these books. So,
Right.
I want people to understand though, that ChatGPT is not completely out of the realm of possibilities for use as a tool though. I want you to know when to use it and when not to use it. So one of the things that you should know about AI is that it's good for pattern recognition. So if you're looking for an idea, or if you're looking for maybe you have a story and you have a gap and you're trying to figure out like, what does my character need to do in this particular gap in time, or like how do they figure this part, how do they jump from this part of the plot to this part of the plot? Give me several examples, or give me some suggestions, because the AI can pick out some patterns and it can tell you and give you some ideas, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
love it as far as like writer's block anymore. You shouldn't have it, like honestly, because this is the tool, right? But it's also good for language generation, right? Like for helping you kind of craft an idea or condense an idea, or come up with some dialogue, although it's not great with dialogue, but I will say it at
Not
least give
great,
you an
but
ideas, so that's a good thing. It is not great. These are the things you should not use AI for. It is not a great source. It is not Google. It is not the same as going and finding a first source. When I was taking journalism in school, and one of the things that we were learning is like, learning the difference between sources, right? And like this would have been down there with Wikipedia, guys. It is not it would
Right.
not be considered a
Oh,
source.
yeah.
So
Let
at
me,
all. Go
yeah,
ahead.
because like, so I did, for those of you who don't know, I worked in the museum world for a long time. I founded the
Right.
research department at the Wallace District Mining Museum and did research for the EPA Region 10. So if you go look up EPA Region 10 documents related to the Coeur d'Alene Mining District in northern Idaho, you can read some really boring reports authored by me. But I
Woohoo!
tried to make them as entertaining as possible. But the most important part of that, as many of you know who've written for the government, is the executive summary. Nobody reads the rest of
Nobody
the
reads
report
that.
except for the guys that are on the ground doing the work,
Right.
right? But there was a standard for the research.
Right.
And the reason is I can't use secondary sources.
Right.
What that means is I can't go to Stacy's book who said, I researched these archives at the University of Idaho, and these are the conclusions that I came to. No, I have to go
To the
to the
primary source.
archives, the
Mm-hmm.
primary source at the University of Idaho, which is the land grant university for Idaho, and also the home of the U.S. Geological Survey in Idaho and the Idaho Geological Survey. Hi, Ray. Nice to see you. Highly doubtful he's watching this podcast. But anyway, but I mean, I had to go to the source, right?
Right.
And so you should try to get as close to the source as possible. There are cases where you can get AI to cite its sources. When it cites its sources, go to the
You have
source.
to cite,
Don't take the AI's interpretation of the source, because the interpretation is where the hallucination happens, not in the source itself. So like
right.
when we were looking at AI studies, when Stacey and I were looking at AI studies, what we did was we'd get as close to the source study as possible
Right.
before we quote something, because the reason is I can quote anything and make you believe anything about it if I interpret it, spin the interpretation a certain way. But facts are facts, right? But I had a mentor when I was doing that, and he was the state geologist for Idaho for about 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant man, named Earl Bennett. Hi, Earl. Again,
Not
unlikely to be
probably
listening to
not
this
listening to this
podcast,
podcast.
more than likely. But one thing that Earl Bennett taught me was that he taught me a lot about geology, but he taught me, he said, Troy, what you need to understand is this top 10% of geology
Mm-hmm.
for the things that you do, because the rest of it is theory and changes every 5 years. And all you need to know is these basic facts about mining geology and the geology of this region. And if you understand those things, you can write comprehensive reports and people will think you're very smart. And so that's the part that I learned. That's
Mm-hmm.
the part that I learned, right?
Right. Right.
Is about that. I learned how to do that.
Yeah,
So
well,
like
I
I
will
mean,
say
so
that
so yeah,
it's good at probably giving you some ideas of where to find sources, but it is not
mhm.
a source.
Not a
So
source, not a
just
source.
letting you know that right out of the gate. The other thing it is not a fact checker. It is not going to check facts. So
Mm.
do not go into AI and say, "Hey, can you check the facts of this source or check the relevancy of this particular topic?" It's not going to be able to do that. It will more than likely give you some lie. It's really fun to watch some of
Yeah.
these AI guys testing it, and it is interesting to see how
Oh,
often AI is willing to lie. It is so weird.
or just be wrong. I had it
Yeah.
give me an Amazon link for a book that I thought that looks like a legitimate book. In fact, I think I knew the title of the book enough.
Yeah.
And I clicked on the link that AI gave me, and it did not go, it went to a 404 page, and I
Yeah.
had to search on Amazon for the book anyway. So don't use the links that it gives you, even not because just because they may or may not be
They may
accurate.
or may not be accurate. Yeah. Test
Test
everything.
everything. Test
And so
everything.
another thing that AI is not, it is not a researcher. Again, it might be an idea maker and it might tell you where to find resources, but it is not going to research those resources for you adequately. You have to go do the digging yourself. You have to go do the mining
Mhm.
yourself. You have to find the information and read through it and see if the abstracts match your theories, right? Like it's just kind of the way
Mm-hmm.
you are going to have to do this. So AI is really good at sounding like an expert because it's overly confident. It's meant to be confident, but confidence does not equal authority. Confidence does not
Right.
equal the trust that you need from that particular topic. If you're looking for something for your book specifically, you have to know readers are really like, we're kind of like nerds, guys. And I mean, if you don't believe me, go look at, just Google Andy Weir's latest movie and see how many people are out there like testing his science. Like he
Mm-hmm.
had to he had to do some research because he knew
Seeing if the
these
science
nerds,
holds.
yeah, these
Yeah.
nerds were going to come out of the woodwork, and he knows what he's talking about. And yes, not all the science works, it's fiction, folks, but at the same time he knew people were going to go in there and test it out. So
Right.
it's kind of a, but again, I'm betting you $1,000,000. I mean, I'll ask Andy when I see him, but I'll bet you he had a great time researching that stuff, guys.
Oh yeah.
So
You bet he did, because that's the thing, is he's a nerd like us. But I wanted to bring up one more thing that
sure,
you
go
talked
ahead.
about the other day,
Yeah.
about how people are going, like those people were going to a makeup artist and saying,
Oh
this
yeah.
is the brand and type of makeup that you need to use to give me this Instagram look, or
Yeah.
whatever look
I
it is
want
they're looking for.
this makeup is
I
for
want
me.
this look, and this makeup is the kind of makeup I want to use. And the person doing the makeup has to actually tell them that does not exist. Did you get that from AI? Because that's not real.
They'll be standing there with
Like,
their
there's not
phone
even
and
a
be like,
brand.
but this is what it told me. And they have these almost, she made it sound like they're having like these complete breakdowns in the store because they're like, but and she's like,
Chat GPT told me this is
I
what I
don't
need.
I don't know what to tell you.
It
Also,
doesn't exist.
my best friend and we're always laughing about some, like, I mean, I'm petty, guys, like you should know this about me, but sometimes I get out into public and if I see somebody who looks a little bit like they didn't check themselves in the mirror before they left the house, I will sometimes I'll make a comment because I'm
Like
petty
me every day.
every
Yeah.
day. Like, yeah. And honestly, I would hope that my best friend would say, yeah, Stacey got, something in your teeth. And I always comment about us being editors and how we're the ones saying, you got some toilet paper hanging out of your pants. And sometimes that's
Yeah.
embarrassing, but it's also, you want that friend. That's who we are as
Yeah.
editors, right? So like my best friend and I always like make comments, and my best friend, she always goes, they must not have a Stacy in their life. They don't have a Stacy. Somebody's got to get that girl a Stacy. And it's funny because I was thinking about the makeup artist that you just brought up and how like these poor people, like that they've come to her for her expert advice to help them find these particular products. And when the expert standing in front of them who works this thing every day is telling them, no, this isn't what you want, and they argue with him because of, well, wait a minute, AI told me. Why are you trusting something that hallucinates over the expert? And that perfectly segues into what I wanted to cover in this last part of our talk, which is that there are many experts out there in their fields, many. And
Mm-hmm.
I do not pretend to understand or know everything. In fact, the older I get, the dumber I get, folks. That's just the way
Mm-hmm.
it is. Like, I understand now more than ever that I do not understand everything. Do I have a wealth of information and knowledge? Yes, I do. Am I an expert in my field? Yes, I am. And I will talk about Dunning-Kruger later because I had a crisis. Like, but like a couple days ago, I had a full-on breakdown. I was like, do I have Dunning-Kruger? Like, because I was
Yeah.
like, I understand something about my field and I sometimes have to check myself. Do I really understand this as well as I think I do? Which is kind of like, the imposter syndrome creeping in. But
Yeah.
the thing is that oftentimes people they'll approach the book writing business and they'll think that they just know it all. They've got it all figured out because they went and they Googled something, or they went to the AI and the AI told them this. And then they come to us and they say, well, this is this and this and this and this. And it's the same thing. It's like that makeup artist where we're standing there going, well, you came to me. I'm the expert. Aren't you? Do you really want my opinion? Because when I give it, it feels like we're getting like a lot more kickback. We're getting a lot more people that are like, but wait a minute, AI told me. And you're like, but I've been doing this business and I publish, like, you guys, when I tell you I publish multiple books a year, I'm not lying. I'm in KDP. I'm probably in there as much as, what's his bucket from Kindlepreneur. I wouldn't doubt that I'm in Kindle as often as he is. Now, does that mean I'm an expert in the way he's an expert? No, that man is studying things that I'm not studying. And when I want to talk to him about keywords, and like, I'm talking to him, right? Like, I'm talking to
Right.
him.
That's why we use Publisher
That's
Rocket,
why I
because
use
he's the
Publisher
expert.
Rocket. He's the expert. But it's the same thing with, book design. It's the same thing with everything. I have experts in my wheelhouse that I can tap into. But when they have questions about the publishing process, guess who they call? They call me.
Right.
Because I know the publishing process. Well, the thing is that when you're an editor and you work with specific genres, like Troy is like an expert at story in general, but he's also an expert at certain topics, whereas I'm an expert at other topics. He's not going to read an epic fantasy. I love epic fantasy. There's different things.
Yeah.
We
Stacy's
specialize
not
in
going to
this.
do a steamy romance.
No,
I'm your
I'm not
man.
going to do a steamy romance.
I'm your man.
But that's what I mean when you come to experts. That's what you're hoping for, is that added resource. This also works in reverse. So when you come to us as an expert in your field and you want to write a book about it, you may not understand what it takes to make that a book. And one of the things that Troy and I are working on right now is actually a branch of our business where we will help entrepreneurs and businesspreneurs, like business owners and, all these guys, write their IP, because they're unfortunately finding that when they go to the AI and try to AI write their books about their IP, it is not actually delivering a product that is worthy of their name.
And it's inaccurate.
And it's
accurate. There's a lot of
There's a lot of problems that are happening right now in the book world with people who are going to AI to have their IP written up, with that as it directly relates to their businesses and their expertise. And I'm working with a couple myself, actually, nurses and other things that are like, they're putting together these amazing courses and coursework for their businesses, and they're finding that when they go to AI for any help, they have to really sift through it because it's hallucinating. But there's a thing called provenance. When you work with art out there in the world, when you buy a piece of art, especially fine art, there's usually provenance. And it's kind of like the ancestry of the product, where you're tracing the ownership of that product back to the actual creator, right? And that's called provenance. They look for provenance when you put things into a museum. Oftentimes the museum, right?
Yep.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're looking for the provenance of that item.
That's always part of your acquisitions process.
Right.
It's like, where did this come from? So I'll give you an example, which is really crazy. Okay, so I'm going through the display cases at the museum. When my friend took over the Wallace District Mining Museum, I went to work with him because I still don't know why I went to work with him, but it was an amazing decision to do that. But one of the things we found was a rifle with no serial number.
Oh, interesting.
Now, for those of you who don't know, rifles and all weapons need to have serial numbers in the U.S. Filing off and removing that serial number is a crime. Yeah. But this did not appear to have had one removed or filed off. It just appeared not to have one. So where did it come from? Well, the acquisitions part of the museum before we got there was not always necessarily the best with record keeping. Right. So we have no idea where this rifle came from. But with some quick research, what I was able to find out by digging a bit and making a couple calls was that Remington made some weapons and then shipped them to France during, I believe it was World War II. And France was supposed to put their own serial numbers on them. Well, France rejected the shipment and sent it back to the U.S. Remington factory.
Interesting.
And a few of those rifles, we're just going to say they
fell off the truck.
They made their way out of the factory into circulation before the rest of them were stamped with U.S. serial numbers. They made their way out of the factory. I don't know what the statute of limitations is. I don't know where this one came from. But that was the story. That was the provenance of that particular rifle. What that
Mhm.
enabled me to do was then to go to the Shoshone County Sheriff's Department and say, this is a rifle without a serial number, but I'm going to display it anyway
Yeah.
because this is where it came from. So it is not illegal.
Right. Right.
Right. So, but there's a process and a research process of establishing that provenance. I have art on my wall that actually has, the
Like
certificate from the
numbers.
artist
Hmm.
and they're numbered and all that kind of stuff. And it's great to have that kind of art, but there's always a provenance. One of them that I have, the artist signed it and I have a photo of him signing it,
That's
which is
cool.
super cool,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, so but all of that being said is exactly what you're talking about. There's provenance in where research and where artifacts, where things come from.
Right.
And it's
Including your
super
IP.
important,
It's certain important.
including
Right.
your IP, which is super important.
Right.
Super
So
important.
that's why it's important that when you put your name on something, you're putting your stamp on it, right? You're putting your reputation on it. You're warranting, and this is part of the copyright law. And when you warrant that you are the creator of that work. And so warranting that work is part of that publishing process. Um, the thing that I wanted to bring up with this particular aspect of the writing on ghostwriting for helping these authors do that is a lot of times they don't have the time. They're working a business, they're working
Oh yeah,
some
yeah.
aspect of their business, and they're looking for people to help them write their IP. And that's where ghostwriters come into play with that. But like I said, it's cheaper to go to AI and write it up. But the problem is you lose that provenance because you no longer can say that that author is the one that created that work, right? Because
Mhm.
they didn't actually. And again, it can also ruin the reputation of that particular business owner because it requires a lot of work to
Because
dive in and clean
Well,
all that
and
up.
because of the output, like I have a
And
friend of
yeah,
mine who's working for a ghostwriting service that they use AI for the analysis of the data that the people give them. And then they create drafts and then they hire editors who go through it two or three times, basically re-ghostwriting it, is what you would
yeah.
call it
Hmm.
almost, to take out the
Probably
AI
book
stuff
doctoring is what it is.
to take out the AI stuff and to put the humanity and the human voice in it and to fact check it. Because the biggest danger is that, like, I, as a ghostwriter, don't know, right?
Right.
So, we're working with a guy that, like, I had to sit down and tell him, you are the foremost expert in your field. You're amazing. You know all this information, and I love all the information you have to give. You, however, do not know how to write a book, and I
Right.
do. So you need to give me that information and get it out of the way so I can write the book,
I mean, and it's
right?
the same thing. I mean, you've
But
you've
yeah,
ghostwrited at several
it's
things for several people that are like, holy crap, there's like the amount of
oh
crap
yeah,
that's in their brain and the knowledge and the expertise that they have, like we would never hold a candle
yeah.
to
I'll
that
never,
in that business, right? Like we have no idea. But
yeah,
when we sit down to help them craft that book, we know how to craft a book. And so it's
right,
this, and it's so again, they can maintain that provenance because they are the creator and they're the ones feeding that information, but we're helping them put all that together. And so we're kind of like the compiler,
right.
right? So that's
I
what
mean,
ghostwriters are.
I'm working with a gal right now who is she's an amazing storyteller, but she is still working on writing a book. But she's also writing a guidebook that's a nonfiction guidebook. I'll just say, hey, Captain Laura, if you're listening to this, howdy. Wonderful, fantastic woman, brilliant,
Hmm.
brilliant in
Yeah.
several areas
You told me
where,
a little bit
like,
about her, and I'm a fan. Like, so if you ever run
I
into her,
am
like, tell her I'm fangirling over her. She
I'll
is like
I have
kick
to text
ass.
her when we're done with this. We're recording this podcast actually because we're in the middle of something. So I have to text her right after this. But I mean,
Tell her
this is the thing. This woman is
fangirling.
amazing. She's
Right.
received awards for being a huge influencer for women around the world. Right? She's absolutely an astounding and amazing woman. But she 100% trusts me to help her craft her book
Right.
because she doesn't know how. She
Right.
knows parts of how, and she's learning how. And I mean, this is a woman who's done amazing things and goes to writing conferences and takes basic classes because she knows this is something she needs to learn more about if she's going to do it in the future. What I'm doing in the editing process and almost co-writing process with her is teaching her how to write better.
You know what's interesting about what you just said there though is that you still have me edit your work, right? I
Yeah.
100% like I'm always having you edit and look at my work always. It's
Hmm.
funny to me how like even in this business if I were going to write a book there would be no way that I would put knowing what I know about this business there would be no way that I would put a book out without having a human editor put his
Hmm.
eyes on her eyes on my book. It's kind of one of those things where you just kind of know that that's the process in book writing that has to happen. And
Hmm.
it's just one of those things that in the ghostwriting process how that works it's also in the but also like it's you know it's like Captain Laura or it's like Scott Carvett or any of these other guys that are pilots. They have checks, right, that they have to go through,
Hmm.
and those checks I think they exist in every single one of our fields, right? Every
Hmm.
single
Oh.
business that you're in. And one of these checks that we're talking about today and that I want people to understand is the research, right? Like that is like, this is like full circle. You have to understand and know that the research that you put in the training that you put into this business, and it is a business, guys, is just as important as when you learn to drive a car or when you learn to do
Hmm.
anything in this life. You can't just say creatively, I am pure creativity. I'm going to go in the kitchen and I'm going to make a flambe. I'm
Yeah,
going to
you got
make
to
some
start
kind
with
of
a
like, you
recipe.
got to know what you're doing, right?
Well, and I mean, I'll give you an example just from pilots, right? From two different pilot examples. So every pilot, when a new aircraft comes out or when they switch aircraft, they have to become certified on that aircraft.
Right.
Because you're a pilot doesn't mean you can just hop in any
Any
plane
plane.
and fly it. That's
Right.
not the way that that works. I mean, a friend of mine flies air shows in a Czech trainer. So
Mm.
all the buttons and gauges and everything are in Czechoslovakian. Does he
Wow.
speak Czechoslovakian? No.
Wow.
Did he have to learn for sure what all those levers meant? Are they usually in kind of a familiar space? Yeah, they usually design cockpits pretty much the same way on fighter jets, but he still had to
But
learn he
mhm.
had to learn that cockpit. Why? Because it's different than another one. So if he hops into a different aircraft, he has to be certified on that aircraft. And if he's flying passengers, it's even more important to be certified on that aircraft, right? So even pilots, just because I'm a writer doesn't mean that I can hop from book to book without doing any training in between. If I'm going to
Mhm.
write in a completely different genre, I have to learn the tropes of that
Right. And it's
genre.
the same thing for an editor.
The
I can't
same thing
edit
for
everything,
editors.
right? Like I can't just edit
No,
everything. It's not
yeah,
just about noun, verb, adjectives. Sometimes
some
it
things I
requires
don't
more.
edit. I don't edit certain genres.
Right.
Why? Well, because that's not my wheelhouse. And I would argue I haven't been trained on those genres.
Right.
Right? This is not a matter of writing, editing, all of these things is not a matter of being a generalist and just being able to do everything.
Right.
That's not the way that it works. And
Right.
it's not the way that if you think about your job, whatever that happens to be, if you switch positions, more than likely you have to train on a new position
Right.
because there's some things that are different about that position.
Right.
Regardless of how long you've been in the field, there's something you have to train for,
Right. Exactly.
right?
So
Hey,
I
that's
guess
life,
that's
man.
just
That's
life. I
life.
mean, yeah, that's the thing. So I kind of want to bring this back to what happens when you don't read. Okay. So there's a few things that happen that I will say that I notice. One of the things is that you can be overly descriptive. You'll usually one of the rookie mistakes that I see sometimes is he stood up, he walked to the door, he turned the doorknob, he opened the door, he walked through the door. Like that's kind of that's a really rookie mistake. Somebody who doesn't read wouldn't recognize that that is like horribly boring. um Flat prose, like understanding and knowing that you're writing something that's just very like monochromatic in a way. Repetitive structures, these, does this all sound familiar? It sounds like AI, right? Poor pacing, right? Lack of
Hmm.
voice, surface level thinking. Like, you guys, this is all the same thing that AI does. So what's funny, and this is why I think there's a lot of like misconstrued, like, oh my gosh, this is AI. No, it's not. She didn't use AI. Well, she sounds like AI. Well, the reason she sounds like AI is because she's a rookie writer and she probably doesn't read.
Right.
There
Or
could be
even if
that
she does,
too.
she just implements writing a story poorly.
Right.
Because one of the things that's really important to notice about AI too, along with the time thing that it does, is it does weird things with the five senses. It
Yeah.
introduces smells to something that doesn't smell. It
Or yeah,
introduces a
or
taste
taste
to
to something
something
that
that doesn't
that
taste,
like to
right?
metal.
And where
Like
like
weird things.
why would you use that? So there's a difference. There's amateur metaphors and similes that just don't work. And then there's ones, but some most of the time in those cases, you can kind of figure out what they were thinking and saying, okay, well, they're just an amateur, they don't understand it. With AI, sometimes it makes no sense at all,
Right.
just at
It doesn't
all.
it doesn't fit
Like
into the
the light
world.
taste, the light tasted of copper pennies. The
What?
light tasted like
Yeah.
copper pennies. I'm like, a part of my brain just came off and spun into the
Spun away.
corner. I'm going to need that back. But you know what I mean? So there's things like that that happen that I'm like, sometimes they happen with just authors who are new. Sometimes they happen with AI because it doesn't understand the five human senses because that's not how it
Right.
perceives the world.
So yeah, so AI to
So,
me is almost like it's almost as bad as a rookie writer who doesn't read.
well, the thing is, you just think of it this way. Okay, AI is a amateur intern who you can have do certain tasks for you,
Right. They're
but
really great assistants, right?
you would not have an English intern write your book for you. I've developed two rules with AI. This is another podcast, but I'm just going to
Yeah.
drop them here really quick.
Okay.
Is there's two things I'm using AI for because with everybody else, I bought into the hype of having AI do all kinds of
You
stuff.
totally did too. I will attest
But
to that because Troy
and
did.
I
He was like
like
in
I
it.
paid for tools, I did all this other kind of stuff, and I
Hmm.
really immersed myself in the whole thing. And then I've been listening to people who are more like me who want to take a common sense approach to AI and have AI do the things that it's good at and not do the things it's not good at. So there's two
Right.
things I want AI to do for me. One is to save me time and effort on tasks, repetitive tasks and
That are
boring tasks
mundane.
that I
Hmm.
don't really need to do, which
Right.
involve things like recognizing patterns or analyzing data, things AI is good at. The second thing I want it to do is make me money.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't save me time and energy in my current task without adding more tasks, and if it doesn't make me money, I'm not doing it with AI.
Right.
Now, I mean, and look, this is just my opinion and my rule.
That's just
Okay.
one
you
person's application
you
to the
can
tool.
do whatever
Whatever
you
you want.
want, but the more and more experts out there that I listen to that are actually using AI in a way that's
Or
profitable to
developing
them,
it.
these are the two things they are
I know that
focusing on.
you've been really studying and reading up on a lot of people who are in the development stage, the development of
Right.
AI.
In the
Yeah.
development, and I've been reading about some of the history and the development of AI and what we think the future of AI is. And I really do think that those two things are things that are key. Okay.
Right.
Again, doing research, not by asking AI about
Right.
itself,
Certainly.
but by going to people who
But
are experts and
going to the
who
experts.
have been
Yeah.
there. This one book I'm reading, the gal started working with and reporting on and understanding AI in 2015, before
Right.
most of us even knew it was happening.
Right.
So it's basically the thing about all of this stuff, whether it's AI or whatever it is, all about this research stuff, is that it should serve a purpose, first of
Right.
all, but it's really important for you to add your human element to it to understand it.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
ultimately, you are the one who is doing the thinking and feeling involved in your writing, and
Hmm.
reading is a thinking and feeling thing. And that's why when you read, you become a better writer in general because you're doing more thinking and feeling.
Right. Exactly. So for the system, I want you guys to think about this, and this is where you guys can, again, how you apply research. Use AI as a starting point. Okay. It's a good starting point. You can extract words, ideas, sources from that starting point, and then you can cross-check them. Okay. And go down the rabbit hole to validate and find authority and all of that. Once you're done with that, then you can understand and know how AI points you in a direction, and then it's not actually dotting the I's and crossing the T's. You are the one doing that. Okay. So it can't do the work for you. It can literally just get you started. Some hierarchy in sources you need to understand. Troy and I mentioned some of them. Primary source, that's the source. So for example, if I'm telling a story about a time that I fed my dog this weird dog food and my dog had an allergic reaction, that's a primary source, right? Like, I'm the one that witnessed that. I'm the one that fed my dog, right? That was my experience. A secondary source is if I told that story to Troy, and then Troy told you, hey, Stacy told me once about this thing that happened with her dog. And so that dog food. So it's almost like a game of telephone. If you guys know that game, where things can kind of get changed in the storytelling. That's kind of why secondary sources are not always the best when it comes to citations,
Yeah.
right? And so
After
that's why
secondary, they become
after
tertiary
secondary,
sources,
yeah,
which is
right.
basically like somebody told me this at some time or another, and I believed them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
a
so
tertiary source.
this is one of the reasons why hearsay is not allowed in court.
Yeah.
So anyway, so primary sources are great for resources. Experts are great. Experts are great resources. Academic work, publications, journal reports, journal articles, those are great. Reputable publications, articles. Now, keep in mind, articles are often written by people who are voicing an opinion or a perspective, and those are often citing sources. If they're correct, if they're real journalism, if they're real journalists, they are citing primary sources. So just keep that in mind. So always go to those primary sources. It's funny to me sometimes how I'll read an article that's been published by the New York Times, and the sources that they're citing are saying something completely different than the person who's writing the article. So it's always good to go check out the primary sources.
Right. And just a note on that, everybody has biases.
Right.
Stop denying that you have biases. Everybody has biases. Everybody comes in with a bias. So when you're reading an article that's by anyone, even if they're trying their very best to be an objective journalist, there's generally going to be some bias involved. This is why we go to primary sources.
Right. So primary sources are first, experts are second, academic work is third, because again, biases are starting to interject in here. We've got reputable publications, we've got our articles, books. It actually is not reputable. It's reputable publications like journals, but then it goes books, articles, and then AI. So AI is the bottom of the stack, guys. It is not at the top. It is like down here. And then, like I said, use it like a dumb search engine. So then fiction versus nonfiction, you can bend reality, but it must feel real in fiction. So that's why we say research is still important when you're reading fiction or writing fiction. And nonfiction, yeah, we all know that if you're going to be the expert, then you got to be the expert, right? And you want to make sure that doesn't get muddied up by using or implementing ghostwriters or AI that mess that provenance up. So you got to keep that all in line. So bad research breaks immersion. In nonfiction, it destroys your credibility, right? Like, you do not want to destroy that credibility. That's what you're trying to keep intact, and that's what you're trying to capitalize on. Don't mess that up. So basically, I guess what we're saying in this podcast is AI is not the problem. It's actually your inability, if you have a bias of or a lack of willingness to dive deeper. So
well, I mean,
I'm just going to hope that you get your feet wet.
It's not even necessarily that AI is the problem. AI is a tool in a quiver of many tools, and most of those tools in the research area are much more useful than AI. The thing I would like to, my last part about this is, like, if you're using AI to do research, my question is why?
Why?
Because if it's about speed and efficiency, research has never been about speed and efficiency. Always, every time I did one of those reports for the government, the number one criteria was accuracy. And the reason is, in reality, I mean, breaking it down, and not to brag about anything or anything like that, but some of those decisions made based on those reports involved millions of your tax dollars.
Right.
So accuracy was obviously super important. And also, as a museum professional, I had a fiduciary duty to the museum, to our patrons, and to those people who were our clients, like a legal fiduciary responsibility to responsibly and objectively report on the events that happened at those mine sites.
I'm glad you
I
mentioned
mean,
that,
that was
Troy, because
my, that
I,
was, I mean, that was literally, I could have been
it's a weight
sued
on
if
your
I did it
shoulders.
wrong.
Right, right,
Oh,
exactly. And
yeah.
I'm going to speak to that a little bit because we had some comments in our last podcast from some people about, the use of AI and whether or not we had the experience or the, and I will say this. I want you to know, Troy and I have broad opinions about the use of AI. Like I said, I use it every day for certain tasks. He does too. And there's certain reasons why we say we use it for certain tasks and not for others. And there's a certain reason why we give these words as caution to you, but it's because of that responsibility that we have as editors. And I want people to understand and know that the reason we share the expression, we express the opinions we do in the way that we do is specifically because we understand that there are broad reasons that authors write. And those broad reasons are individually determined by the author, and everybody is unique in their approach to this business. And so when you come to us and you say, oh, I want to use this AI tool for this reason, we can then assess and understand and know whether or not that tool is going to work for you in that goal that you have. But if you come to us and you don't have those kinds of like goals in place and you're just saying, I just want to do this, we can then assess it and use it in that respect as well. So like every time you approach a project, and every project is unique along with every author is unique, know that when you work with an editor in any respect in this business, that we're going to actually, the best way for you to utilize that relationship and to leverage that relationship is to actually have those communicative exchanges where you can actually talk about those things. And then that way, how to go forward in the project. And I want to be very clear about that as you go forward in this business.
Right. I mean,
Because it's
depending
different.
upon the type of project that we are doing as editors, there's a lot of times when we have a legal responsibility to essentially tell you the truth.
Right.
Now, there are different ways that we can tell you the truth. We can be nicer, we can be mean, we can be
We could just be
snarky,
harsh. Yeah.
we can just be harsh, or we can temper that with our understanding of authors and the way that they feel about their work and the way they feel about the world, all that kind of stuff, right? But the primary thing to understand is that we just legally, because of what you contracted us to do, we legally have a responsibility to tell you the truth as we know it about your manuscript. Right? We have to do our very best to do that. That's our legal responsibility. It's literally our job.
That's why when you come to me and you're hurt, your feelings are hurt because, for whatever reason, I've told you something about, your copyright and whether or not it's going to be intact, or how to go about getting your ISBNs, and that you need to do it this certain way. And you can't just chintzy it and do it just one way and still accomplish the goal you want to have. Like there's a lot of authors that, they get frustrated about different aspects of this job. Right. And it's helpful for them to understand and know that I'm not going to be offended if they get upset. But also,
because I tell people the story. My first editor, when I got my first edits back, like real professional edits of my first commercially viable novel that was worth the paper it was later printed on, right?
Right.
I was mad. Like and I'm not a little mad. I mean, I was livid, red line.
I can't imagine you getting mad, Troy.
But you didn't know me when I was younger. But and if you push me too far as a person, there've been a couple people that have pushed me too far. It's generally just a bad idea. But anyway, the primary thing is, like, I was redlined mad until I took some time. I took advice from other authors that I knew at the time, and I took some time and stepped back from it. And then I tried to look at the things she wanted to change about my manuscript. as objectively and logically as possible, divorcing myself from the emotion that I had about my work. And then I was able to see, damn it, she was right.
Right.
Right. But I was, so when authors come to me and they're mad about the feedback that I've offered them, I'm like, thank God you're normal.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
now
Now
once you
we
get
can get to
over
work.
that, let's have a discussion about it and
Yeah.
let's get to work.
Yeah.
Right. Because I absolutely want you to push back on edits. As I told a client recently in a Zoom, I'm like, I absolutely want you to push back on my edits. Absolutely. Because if I make changes to your manuscript and you don't push back on anything, what it means is that I know your story better than you. And that's bad news.
That is
You are the one
bad.
who wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one who wrote it. So I want you to push back on me. I want to have those discussions with you, but I want you to understand from the beginning my heart. My heart is I love your story, or I
You
wouldn't be
know,
spending any time on it. And I want to take that story and make it the best it can be in the world. And
thinking about
sometimes that means that I sound harsh, and sometimes it means that I sound mean, but I'm not being that way because my true heart is I want you to be successful as an author,
yeah,
and I
exactly.
care about story.
100%, 100%.
That's it.
It was funny because I was thinking about one of our other authors that you and I have both had the privilege of reading books of his. And I just gave you back his manuscript last week because I was like, you take this one, I'll take this one. I'm a little heart hurt about that because I was like, I wanted to get in there, but it's
And
okay.
I'm not.
I'll read the copy edit. It's fine. But it was funny because I was like laughing because he is, when I first took his first book, he's kind of like morphed into this. He's morphed into this reader, this or the not this reader, this writer who actually like thrives when he gets his feedback now because he like loves
Mhm.
to go, oh my gosh, like this is so much
Oh,
fun because my
me
editor just
too.
found all this stuff and I am like gonna dig in. And he again is one of those researchers, right? Like he's constantly researching. He's an expert in his field, guys. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing his job for a long time. He's also the fittest author in the United States. But he's very proudly
Well,
wearing
maybe
that
second. Maybe second.
but he's
No.
amazing. But anyway, one of the things that he was telling me is that he just absolutely loves getting the feedback, especially from Troy, because Troy understands and knows like that genre really well. So it's fun. It's really fun when you get
Oh
to
yeah.
actually have these conversations
Now,
about the world building that you guys do as authors. It's just fun because then we can dig
oh
in there with
yeah.
you. The greatest compliment I ever got was from my first author, Wes Rand, right? Like the greatest compliment I ever got from him is it's like, I love working with Stacy because I think she said, what did he say? I got it quoted on my website. It says something like to the effect of like, she makes me believe my characters are real. And it's because
Hmm.
they feel real to me. Like when he calls me up, I'll ask him, hey, how's Neville doing? You know, like because
Yeah.
like it's
They come
just
to life.
they come to
Well,
life.
and I mean, I love getting feedback now. Now, when I first started out, man, I hated it. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
so hard to get that feedback. But now when I get feedback, because I understand that the heart of my editor is to make my manuscript better.
Yeah,
So I love getting the feedback because I know it makes my story better.
it
In
makes it
fact,
better.
I mean, I just had Holly, my partner, read this story that I was doing because anyway, long story,
She's
but she has
yeah.
lots of time on her hands at work now. Anyway,
Oh, okay. We'll talk
so
about that
because
later.
she's in a control center, so she can just read all day. So she gives me corrections on my manuscript that I gave her. I
Good for
printed out
her.
for her because she's got no internet in there.
Yep.
And I tell you what, I read through the stuff that she noted in there and I loved all of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
It helps that
And
you love
it's
her.
not because well, it's not even because I agree with all of it. It's not even because I agree with all of it, but it's because someone took the time
Yeah.
and the energy and the effort to not only read my story but care enough about it to give me feedback on it. And to
Yeah.
me, whether I'm paying that person or not, that is one of the most valuable things that I can get from anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
that's my final word.
Final word on the matter. I'm really glad we had this conversation. I know it's a long one today, guys, but this is a big, broad not problem. It's a big, broad topic. And we were going to plan on breaking this down into smaller chunks in the future. So we really wanted you guys to kind of see how this is going to shape out over the next couple of podcasts, because specifically next week, I'm really excited because we're going to talk specifically about the story and how and when you should approach your study of the story. And Troy is going to have a very fun, exciting tool that you will be able to have. I'm very excited about that. Yeah. So speaking of tools, we've got our classes coming up. By the time you watch this, mine will be for April, will already be done. Troy's, though, will be on the 20, what date is that? 28. And his is on character arcs and how they relate to
mapping character arcs to story arc.
Thank you.
Be super fun.
I can never remember titles. Mine is on Profitable Pages. If you want to get a replay of that, go ahead and sign up on printtopro.com, and you can sign up for that, and you should be able to register for it and get the replay. But if not, let me know. Just hit me up. But then in the next month, we have 2 new classes that will be taught for business and craft. So we're excited about that. Register for Feldheim at feldheimwritersretreat.com. And you can also find us at Author Nation and Reader Nation and Killer Nashville this year. So we hope we can see you there this year too, guys. So anyway, thanks for everything. Keep us in your hearts and prayers as we continue to dive into this world.
Yes.
We love you guys. We hope you continue writing, stay weird, and be kind. We'll talk to you guys next week.
See you next time.